Before we start the session, may I thank you for our sponsor first, which are CBX, Bangkok Bank, Indorama, and K-Bank. And now it's time to begin the session. May I invite Klongtoey Attaché, CEO of KCB Corporation Public Company Limited, to conduct this session.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We would like today. I'm so delighted to be here. Basically, it's our director briefing number 4 of 2024, and basically this event is organized by Community Practice in Sustainability. This COP, Community Practice, aim to be the platform to connect, to inspire, to energize, and to sharing the experience on how to walk in the sustainability path. Among IOD member and also any participant who would like to join us, we will have this event to share in form of a talk, a visit throughout the years. And we are very delighted to see a lot of familiar faces who always join us and still coming. And basically today, I'm honored to stand in front of you today to kick off a very inspiration talk about how to integrate sustainability into the corporate strategy. A lot of people question whether sustainability is a cost burden. Is it a very investment heavy? Is it a headache in operation? There's a lot of questions has been popping up to a lot of directors' mind. But today, we are very delighted to have to hear from Mr. Bruce Brumpley, the Deputy CEO of Soneva. And Soneva is very is a very exceptional leader in terms of sustainability in a resort, 6-star resort. It was built like over 20 years ago, thinking about sustainability, and become the first luxury resort without chandelier, without marble. And since then, it has been developed so much. And especially today, you will hear from Bruce, who has another hat as a CFO, Chief Financial Officer of Soneva. The CFO guy always knows what the stakeholder wants, what the bank looking for, shareholders looking for, and he needs to balance that and integrate that, weaving it into strategy for Soneva. So I would not let it take any longer. I would very delighted to welcome Mr. Bruce Brumpley into the stage.
How are we going to do this? You can sit up here?
Yeah, I can sleep here.
Perfect. Okay, I'm just going to rearrange some things here. Okay, welcome along, guy. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for inviting me, Anne, the IOD, Colin. I've called this presentation, here it is. I've called this presentation The Business of Sustainability, and that has 2 meanings, because Soneva is often seen as the business of sustainability, a company that is very focused on sustainability. But of course, sustainability for all of us today in business and directors of companies is super, super important. So the business of sustainability for all of us is really, really important. And I want to start with a check-in, if I could. Just a little check-in with everybody in the room, just to see, most of you are directors of companies, just to get a sense of who thinks their companies are within their particular industry, leaders in their peer group in terms of sustainability. Are there anyone who wants to venture that? No? Who feels that sustainability is something that their businesses may be behind on in terms of the relative to their peer group? Anyone? No. A lot of people in the middle today. Okay. Very good. Okay, this presentation is getting easier and easier. Well, let me start then with a question for you. And the question is this: to what extent should corporations be responsible for the impacts that they have? Right? So to what extent should a company be responsible for the externalities associated with its activities. Now, if you are an economist, you will know who Milton Friedman is. Milton Friedman was probably the most famous economist of the 50s, 60s, 70s. And what Friedman espoused was this idea that companies should do one thing, and that is focus on making money. And the directors of companies should focus on nothing more than ensuring the bottom line of their businesses, not the triple bottom line or the quadruple bottom line, but the bottom line of their businesses. And that society, through the taxes that companies pay, should deal with the externalities that companies produce. And if you think about it, it's a reasonable way of looking at things, right? Because we focus our attention on something that we're good at, which is building a business, making money. But obviously, we've realized, or we've recognized that my clicker doesn't work. We have recognized that, okay, hang on, I'm going back here. Okay, we've recognized now, and there's plenty of research to show this, that purpose-driven companies perform better generally in terms of their stock market performance and in terms of their bottom line performance than companies that lack a purpose. This is one piece of research that I've taken from McKinsey, but if you care to Google it, you will see plenty of research that is there by Blackstone, by McKinsey, by Bain, by many, many others. And if you buy into this idea that sustainability has more value, and this idea of 20% more value, which is what the research shows, then a dollar of profit delivered from a sustainable source is going to be valued way more highly than a dollar of profit delivered from a non-sustainable source. And so if we take that 20%, and if we believe that 20% survey from McKinsey, then if every dollar of profit that we earn is worth 20% more if it's earned in a sustainable way, then one of the easiest ways for companies to elevate their valuations, to elevate their relative peer group valuation, is through ensuring that their earnings are more sustainable than that of their peer group. So from a director's point of view, how to view sustainability, right? How to think about sustainability in your companies. And we have some consultants in the room who will speak about this far better than I can. But when I look at this, I look at it in a very simple way. I just think there are three things from a sustainability point of view that we need to look at. The first of them is policy and reporting. But one of the things we know, if I was looking at the guest list earlier, we've got people who are on audit committees and so on and so forth. We all understand the necessity of reporting and the importance of reporting from the point of view of governance, right? It's absolutely, absolutely critical. But reporting itself can become hugely, hugely burdensome. And this is just something, sorry, it's very long-winded, but I want to read it for you. So this is from the SEC, and what it says is, as the Thai capital market regulator, the SEC is developing a sustainable capital market that provides a mechanism for listed companies to embed environmental, social, and governance factors into their business operations and value chains in line with international standards, national policies, and guidelines. Sure, I don't really know what that means, but what's even more worrying is the second paragraph, which says these include the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties, the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, the 20-year national strategy, the biocircular green economic model, as well as the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. Good luck if you're trying to report on all of that. Fortunately, here in Thailand, we have the One Report, right? And the One Report tries to gather all of that and put it into a way that's super, super simple. And if you look at many other countries in Asia, take from Singapore, Japan, any of the others, they lag behind Thailand in terms of the reporting and the ease of reporting that we have here. Now, what the one report does, as everyone knows, is it basically brings together financial performance and reporting on energy consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, and so on and so forth. And it does it in an easy way, right? Because all of this is basically required in terms of the director's commentary, right? Providing a little bit of data, and everybody does it in a consistent way. So that makes it easy for companies to, I wouldn't say embed sustainability, but at least report about sustainability. Now, if we talk about sustainability reporting, we talk about sustainability accounting. We've got a number of areas that we can look at, and there's sort of the history of sustainability accounting. The history is really important, and you'll see why in a second. We started back in 2011 with the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, and they tried to come up with a way in which companies should report their sustainability initiatives. And we actually use something, and I'll show you in a little while, something we use which is based on SASB reporting. Then, of course, there's the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, and that, again, is a big international reporting initiative which encourages companies to report in certain ways. But then there's the FSB, and this is the dangerous one, not just in Russia. This is the dangerous one in terms of reporting and accounting, and I'll tell you why. Because the FSB, which started in 2009, just after the GFC, lots of shorthand today, but the FSB is the Financial Stability Board, and they're based in Switzerland, and what they do is they basically look at markets and they speak to bankers, either investment banks or government banks and so on, and governments and ministries of the economy, etc. And they say to them, these are the big things that are affecting companies and countries. This is how you should deal with reporting, etc., around those. So the FSB is sort of taken over as this umbrella organization in terms of sustainability reporting. And the FSB, I've kind of covered this already, they launched this task force on climate-related financial disclosures, TCFD. One of the things you'll learn about sustainability is it's full of acronyms. If you don't speak in acronyms, you cannot understand it. But the TCFD is super, super important for all of us, even though the majority of us probably haven't heard about it. And the reason it's so important is because they came up with a series of rules about how companies should report their, or should disclose their environmental impacts in their accounts. In 2023, they took that report, that implementation process, they spoke to governments, they all agreed, so the UK, for example, a few years ago implemented the TCFD. They agreed that it was now time to implement that directly into financial reporting. So in the next 2 years, IFRS has now taken on the role of the TCFD. So now, when you report in IFRS, you will need to report some of your sustainability initiatives. And this is key, because as a CFO, if there are any other people who work on the finance side as directors, you will understand, is if you give a set of accounts to an auditor, they will not sign them off unless they have pretty much eliminated all liability from their side. So what that means is, if you start reporting on climate emissions, on whatever, water use, land use change, whatever the environmental impacts are that you're reporting on, your auditor is going to start demanding that you start providing the data, which is auditable behind that. And auditing is a bit like a saw. You start scratching and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what happens with IFRS. So dealing with auditors is going to be hugely problematic in the next 5 years. The reporting that we will have to do in terms of sustainability is going to become critical for companies, because when you start talking about audited financials, what you start talking about is the second thing which we're going to be talking about now, which is risk and contingent liabilities. Saying to people, these are your carbon emissions, this is the risk to your business, this is potentially the cost to your business, put that onto your balance sheet. That is very scary, but that's the direction of travel. So let's talk about risk assessment and mitigation, because this is, from a director's point of view, obviously hugely, hugely important. Now, at Soneva, we look at our sustainability exposures, our risks, if you like, in 5 very simple buckets. And we actually stole this idea from PwC. They came up with something called TIM, T-I-M-N, which is their reporting standard, and we have something which is very similar to that. And we worked with individuals from Puma to help us put together, because Puma was the first company to do EP&L, to help us put together our own EP&L, but also this total impact assessment, which is kind of like a balance sheet of your sustainability impact. And what we look at...
Bruce, what is EPML?
EP&L.
Yeah.
Environmental profit and loss. There we are. Okay, so looking not just at your financial profit and loss, but saying as well, hey, this is the cost to the environment of me doing business. Good question. So we look at our business in terms of 5 buckets, really. The first bucket is natural capital. Right? Natural capital is what we take from the world in order to run our business. Doesn't matter what business you're in, you use natural capital. If you're in the service industry and you need to move stuff around by trucks, of course, you're taking energy out of the earth. If you run a burger chain, you are using water, you are using land, you are using whatever to get your beef. So natural capital is the first thing. And this is primarily a negative. This is the bit that you take. These are your, in a sense, this is your liabilities on your balance sheet. So we've got land use change, water consumption, CO2 emissions, and energy consumption. And the reason that land use and water consumption are up here, we're a resort company. We run hotels in the Maldives, in Thailand, soon in Japan. Our resorts are typically on small islands. We make our own water. We generate our own power. We don't really use much water apart from desalination. But we import a lot of food. And that food is grown somewhere else. That food is grown in Australia or Brazil or somewhere like that. And it uses a lot of water. And we measure the impacts of our business through the entire value chain, right? So we start not just with what's the plastic that the meat comes in, but where did the meat come from? How long did it take for the meat to grow? How much water was used in feeding that meat? How much pasture was there? How much land use was there to get that meat to grow? And we work with universities, we work with consultants to help us build this model for about 80% of the products that we consume, to really understand through the entire value chain what the impact of us, if you come to our resort and have a hamburger, what is the environmental impact of that hamburger? Now, it's not perfect, but it's about as good as we can get right now, and we're constantly looking to improve that. But so that's what we take from the world, and you need to start to understand that if you're going to be able to report effectively under IFRS. The second thing is human capital. Now, this is in green, thank goodness. So human capital is what we create, the jobs that we create for people, which results in the families that they can raise, the schools that they can send their kids to, and so on and so forth. And we work with consultants and, again, universities to help us create a model which allows us to assess how much value one creates, how much human capital one creates through one's activities. Taxes, how much tax we pay. Of course, there's people taxes that we pay, you know, employment taxes. There's taxes that we pay just because we make profits. Happy to see that big and in green. Property taxes and so on. So that's a contribution that we make to society. This is a contribution that we make to society. The third one is social capital. We have outreach programs in Myanmar, we have outreach programs in the Maldives, we have outreach programs in Thailand. All of these create good for society, and we can measure some of that, and I'll talk about some examples of these later on. And then the final one is economic capital. And economic capital is our profit, right? That's our traditional P&L. And here we have the operating expenditure. So we're buying stuff from the industry, we're buying stuff from suppliers. Well, all of the money that's going into a supplier's business is creating their business. So that's a contribution that we're making to society. Of course, the payroll that we pay to people, and then the investment, very, very important. The investment that comes from equity, the investment that comes from debt providers as well. And when you add all of this together, you come up with what we had was the total impact assessment, right? Were you positive or negative? But we've stopped doing that. We still measure our impacts like this, but we've stopped assuming that it's a zero-sum game, because it's not. You can't chop down a forest in Brazil and plant one in Thailand and say it's the same thing, because it's not, right? And unfortunately, what this process does is it assumes some kind of a zero-sum game. So in the middle, there is not a number anymore saying what our net position is. All we look at now is, what are the negatives? Yes, the positives are all here, and we try and maximize those, but we try and minimize our negatives. And that's the next thing which we are going to focus on. So, policy, frameworks, and reporting, right? That's the dull bit. Unfortunately, as directors in our roles, that's a critical part, really critical part. Risk assessment and mitigation, that's your fiduciary duty to do that, to understand the business, to report on that, and to make sure that you offset those. The third one is what I want to spend the rest of this presentation on, which is talking about action, right? Because sustainability is not just about the reporting, and it's not just about the mitigation. It's about what you do, or it's not just about the risk, it's about how you mitigate things, how you can operate in a more sustainable way if you want to achieve that 20% value premium over your peer group. So let's talk a little bit about action. So I want to introduce Soneva to you. Before I do that, I will ask a question, which is something that Anne alluded to earlier, is how do you define luxury? And this is a question, if I asked you this question 400 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 100 years ago, or 50 years ago, your answer would probably be very similar, right? That luxury is, and this is how the Oxford English Dictionary defines it, the state of great comfort and extravagant living. And if we take that old-fashioned view of luxury, we'd probably all agree that everything that's up here is a luxury, right? This is what we think of as luxury. A clicker that works is a luxury as well. But we live in this amazing, amazing city, right? Most of us do. And in this amazing, amazing city, what we have is 40-degree heat and cars and everything else. We have the luxury sedans, and we have the amazing Michelin-starred food. We have everything here in the city that you would traditionally view as a luxury. But if you ask people what they did last long weekend, they didn't flood to Bangkok. They all left Bangkok, right? They went in search of luxuries. They went in search of things that they truly feel they don't get in Bangkok. This opportunity just to escape, to be with nature, to be with their families, their loved ones. So when I offer you this definition of a luxury as the state of great comfort and extravagant living, what I would say is, let's rearrange the letters a bit. And luxury is more about having time, space, fresh air, being in touch with nature. Those are the true luxuries for people who live in an urban environment. And Soneva is that weekend escape. We are that 2-week holiday that you dream about. That's what we do. So we have 4 resorts, 2 resorts in the Maldives, which I'll talk about in a second, 3 resorts in the Maldives, but one in Thailand and one which is just opened in the Maldives, one you probably haven't heard of before. It's a secret. So we opened Soneva Fushi in 1995. It was the first luxury resort in the Maldives, one of the first truly ultra-luxury resorts anywhere in the world. It is still the #1 resort in the Maldives after nearly 30 years of operation, which for a resort, I can tell you, is absolutely extraordinary. We opened in 2016, we opened Soneva Jani, also in the Maldives, an all-over water resort in a fabulous lagoon. We have Soneva Kiri in Koh Kood in Thailand, and Soneva Secret, which opened last week. Nikan Oi is going to go there in June. It's got 14 of these wonderful luxury villas. It's got 2 which are stuck out in the ocean that you can see, and it's got 1 which you can't see, which is a floating villa. And we don't even know where that is at the moment.
It's floating away.
So, yeah. We're known for very large villas. Our entry-level villa, smallest villa that we have, is 380 square meters. So these are very large properties. That is an example of a villa at Soneva Fushi. This is also a single villa, 9-bedroom villa at Soneva Fushi with a 1,000 square meter swimming pool. This is Soneva Jani. Again, this is one of these 350 odd square meter overwater villas with its own water slides and swimming pools and so on. So we offer huge accommodations, but the real luxuries that we offer are this opportunity to do things that are truly magical. That no matter how many times you do them, they are always magical, like having dinner with your family or your friends on a sandbank in the middle of the ocean with literally nobody around. Again, sandbank picnics on your own private beach. At Soneva Kiri, we have the tripod dining. This is quite a fun one. I've turned the volume down on this. This is one of the restaurants that we have at Soneva Fushi. It is a zip line. The only way to get to the restaurant is to zip line there, and it's a pop-up restaurant, and it's run normally for 3 months of the year, so we have 4 pop-ups a year, and it's only operated by 3 Michelin star chefs. So it's a very unique restaurant. It seats 12 people around a canopy, which is about 40 meters up in the air. As you can see, absolutely extraordinary restaurant. Truly, money cannot buy, or money can buy experience, but a truly luxury experience. This idea of true authenticity, ensuring that you have someone who has spent his whole life making sushi deliver that sushi. This is Chef Akira. He has worked for 20 years for Chef Kenji Gyoten. Gyoten is one of only 3-star Michelin chefs in Japan, sushi chefs. Gyoten opened this 5-seat sushi counter for us in Soneva Fushi, and Chef Akira runs that. It's quite a magical experience to eat sushi delivered by a true master. Of course, teppanyaki as well, delivered under the stars. I think you'll recognize these people, of course, the Suring brothers. We have a lot of pop-up restaurants at our resort. So the Suring brothers have been, actually they were just at Snevakiri a couple of weeks ago. Obviously Chef Ton comes to Snevafushi a lot. He is cooking here at Once Upon a Table. And Once Upon a Table is a 9-seat restaurant, which is kind of like a sushi counter. And you have a 2 or 3 Michelin star chef who only has a cooking plate and some pots and pans. And you spend the evening with them cooking whatever it is they want to cook. It's such a unique experience to see what a chef can really do and to interact with them. That is, again, a true luxury. And of course, Julien Royer, who is, I guess 2 years ago, was the world's #1 chef from Odette in Singapore. And he here is running the pop-up restaurant, which we had at the end of the zip line. And then, of course, we have all the Michelin-starred chefs, but our real stars are, again, those people who deliver exceptional quality food in a place that you simply can't get in the city. We can all go to Suring. We can all go to Odette. It's very difficult to go to Kuntuks, Matuks, in Kokut. This is just an extraordinary, extraordinary experience. I think for anybody who has been there, this must rank amongst the finest Thai food that you can eat anywhere, delivered in a small shack at the end of a mangrove river. We have the same sort of experiences at Snevajani. This is our crab shack. You can only do one thing here, which is eat crab and drink some fantastic Sauvignon Blancs. Again, it's Sri Lankan mud crab made by a Sri Lankan chef. It's truly wonderful, authentic experience. The restaurant itself only has maybe 20 covers that it can manage. And it is, as you can see, something that is a true luxury for people living in somewhere like Bangkok. Now this I found the other day. This is SF Cinemas. Colin's nodding. You can tell. He's got the Rolex. He goes here a lot. But this opened, I guess, last week or something, and I saw this picture. And we have this too. We have this too. We have a full-size cinema under the stars where people sit on their daybeds and there's a barbecue at the back and you watch a movie under the stars, again, with your family, something that is just money cannot buy. If you're into stars, we have the 2 largest telescopes in the Indian Ocean. One of them at Snevafushi, not this one, is a 3D telescope, which is a pretty extraordinary experience because you get to see depth of field when you're looking at the stars. So when you're looking at something like Saturn and you can actually feel the depth of the rings, it's difficult to explain how mind-blowing it is. And of course there's tennis. People like Jonas Bjorkman, 15 times Grand Slam tennis champion, who is our tennis coach. We have paddle tennis. Basically, we have anything food you want, anything activities that you want, anything escape that you want, and for kids, literally anything you want. We have the largest dens or kids facilities of any resorts, certainly in Asia. And these are, whether it's zip lines, game rooms, music rooms, whatever. This one here is a smaller one. The bigger one is at Snevafushi. This is an absolute haven for kids and gives parents the opportunity to really escape. And then wellness is something that's really important for us. Really, really important. It's big focus for us now. This is the spa at Snevajani. You can go here for a massage, of course, but you can go here for stem cell treatment if you want. You can go here for all manner of IVs and other, hyperbaric oxygen treatment and so on. So we're really going quite medical in the spa. But again, as I said, if you want the massage is there as well. And then finally, there's nature. One of the things that we can guarantee pretty much our guests is when you go out in the evening, dolphins. The dolphin cruise is one of the most popular things that we do. It's absolutely extraordinary, and as I said, almost every evening you're guaranteed to do this. So what we try and do is make sure that our guests are always in touch with nature, because that's the very essence of what Soneva is and the essence of what we believe luxury is. So all of that is not to be boastful, but it's to explain why we are the only resort company in the Maldives to have any resorts in the world's 50 best. We have 2. Number 36, Snevajani, Snevafushi, the world's number 1 resort, beach resort, the world's number 7 hotel. This is nearly 30 years old. That's pretty extraordinary performance. Now, all of that magic, all of that luxury is actually not what defines us. And it's not how we define ourselves. How we define ourselves is by the environmental performance that we have, not by the awards that we win, and we win plenty of those, but it's about the how we perform relative to our own expectations. And in the hospitality industry, we're better known for sustainability rather than luxury. And in this particular year where we won World's Most Luxurious Resort, we also won World's Most Sustainable Resort. And to us, that's our goal. So very, very quickly, some behind the scenes stuff. We have 22,000 guests come to our resorts per year. We import, and it'll now be about 2,000 tons of food freight per year to feed people. We're a carbon neutral company. We have been since 2008. Carbon neutral, not just in terms of our scope 1, i.e. our own activities, but carbon neutral in terms of all of the activities throughout our supply chain, measuring all the way down to the water, the land use change, etc., of the beef that we don't serve beef, but of the lamb or whatever it is that we serve. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. And also, incidentally, carbon neutral, offsetting all of the emissions from the flights of the guests that fly to our resorts, including all of the long-haul flights. We recycle 93% of the waste that comes onto our islands, and of that 2,000 tons of freight, most of it is packaged in something. There's tons and tons of food waste as well. An enormous amount of stuff washes up on the beaches. We have to clean our beaches, 2-3 times a day. All of that needs to be collected, sorted, recycled, reused. 93% of what comes onto our islands is recycled on the island. We produce 100% of our own drinking water. We do not have any bottled water. We do not have any of this on our islands. This is pet 1, in case anybody is going to pick on me. But we produce all of our own water. We bottle it in reusable bottles. We used to sell it and donate the money to charity. Now we don't charge for the water anymore. We have eliminated single-use plastic from our operations. That was a mammoth effort. There are no plastic bags. There is no cling film on our resorts. There is no bags, films, bottles, anything other than what washes up on our beaches. Our food arrives no longer in plastic bags. It arrives, if it is meat, it arrives in butcher's paper and so on. Where we have a challenge is with things like imported TVs and so on, where it comes packaged in, helpfully put in styrofoam and so on. But that's that piece that we're not able to recycle. But we've largely eliminated plastic, and that was very, very difficult to do, as I think anybody living in Thailand would know. We produce 30% of all of our green food on our islands. 100% of the salads and stuff that you eat on our islands we'll pick within half an hour of you ordering that food. If you have a hamburger, the tomato, the lettuce, etc., will be picked within half an hour, an hour of you eating it. So we have very, very expansive organic gardens, as you can see, which run through the canopies of the trees. And lastly, on the sustainability side, we produce half of our energy from solar power. We have the largest solar facilities of, I guess, any resort company in the world. Certainly any profitable non-charity supported resort we certainly do. And we have 2.5 megawatts of solar power at Soneva Fushi, 2.75 at Soneva Jani, and we have battery capacity to support that as well. What this allows us to do is to turn the generators off in our properties during the day. So during the day, our properties are completely silent. And we run them at night for the aircon. At Soneva Secret, we're going to be 95%. We've got floating solar, which is being developed at the moment. We have an ice chiller, central ice chilling facility. So we're going to be 95% carbon free at Soneva Secret by the end of this year, once that is up and running. So almost an entirely carbon free resort operation. All of this, as we'll see later, pays huge dividends to the bottom line. Right? The payback on this is very, very fast. So, question I get asked all the time, won't sustainability undermine my profits and stymie innovation and growth? And the answer is no, and definitely no. It does quite the opposite. It drives innovation. And my boss is calling, actually. Sorry. So here we are. Sustainability. Sorry, I got a little bit lost here. Okay, here we are. For the majority of companies, our focus is on growth. And if you talk to companies about a sustainability strategy, what they'll typically say to you is, we have a chief sustainability officer who sits over here who deals with our sustainability stuff. And then we have a board of directors and a management team that sits over here and drives our growth and our strategy. Well, that's a dual track strategy, sustainability and growth. And I can tell you which one wins in this. It's never this. It's never sustainability. What we need to do to be truly sustainable and to really embed sustainability into the business is to create sustainable growth. The only way we can do that is where we have a strategy which is driven both by the top line, but also by the sustainability performance. And I'm struggling with my clicker here. I apologize. So I wear two hats, right? Those two hats are Chief Sustainability Officer and Chief Financial Officer. So I'm charged with ensuring the financial sustainability of the company, like all of us in this room as directors pretty much are. I'm also charged with ensuring that we achieve all of these sustainability initiatives and goals that we've set for ourselves. And that means that I have to bring together growth and sustainability in a single strategy. And it's a lot easier than you think, sustainability. It's super, super simple. And once you start doing it, it's difficult not to do it. And I'll tell you how to do it. Is sit down with a white piece of paper and draw a line down the middle of that piece of paper. And then take one end and join the other into a circle. That's all sustainability is about, right? It's taking a linear process and making it circular. So when we talk about that bottle of water that we serve at our resorts, think about the process as it used to be. As it used to be, we may serve Evian or whatever, or maybe a bottle of Fiji water, right? The famous Fiji water. And how does Fiji water come about? Well, what happens is the chemicals are made here in Thailand or in China or wherever they are, and then they send out to Fiji, and they get turned in a factory into a plastic bottle, and a label gets put on them. And then some water, if it's in Fiji, it just comes from a normal water facility, gets put into that bottle, and those bottles all packaged up, and they're put onto a truck somewhere, and they're taken to a jetty, and they sit on the side of the jetty, and then they're put onto a boat, and that boat brings them to Hong Kong and a big distribution facility in Hong Kong, and from the big distribution facility, makes its way to Thailand, and then it sits on a dock here in Thailand in the sun, and after about 3 weeks there, it then goes to a warehouse, and then it goes to Central's facility, and then from Central's facility, it comes to our hotel, and then from our hotel's facility, it goes into the fridge, and then you come in from a hot day, you reach into the fridge, you take out your ½ liter of water, you drink it, you throw it away. That's an incredibly, incredibly wasteful process. The circular process is very simple. Get your water, in our case, desalinated water, but if you're here in Thailand, there are plenty of places you can get clean water, including from a tap. Proper filtration. Put it into recyclable glass bottles, which you can clean yourself with a bottling facility, and give that to your guests. We've been doing that since 2000. We banned all branded water on our resorts in 2008. We used to sell a liter of our own water for $12, exactly the same price that we charge for a bottle of Evian. We never had a complaint, never once. The margin on a bottle of Evian is $10. Well, sorry, it costs about 50 cents for the Evian. The margin, the cost of our own water is about $0.01. The margins are enormous. And those margins we used to plow into some water projects. But what it just shows is how wasteful linear processes are. So whatever you're doing, whatever your business, it doesn't matter whether you're serving hamburgers, resorts, driving trucks, anything. Take a linear process, whatever that is, and make it circular, and that is all you need to do for sustainability. And we have these centers at each of our resorts called waste to wealth centers. The reason we call them waste to wealth centers is because I'm in charge of sustainability. I'm also in charge of the purse strings. So waste for us is a resource. It's a valuable, valuable resource. So nothing gets thrown away. It ends up here. And we take this waste and we turn it into wealth. And let me give you some examples here. So garden waste. So Soneva Fushi, for example, is, I wouldn't call it an ancient jungle, but it's pretty old. We have trees in there which are many hundreds of years old. And trees fall over in storms and so on. And you've got to do something with it. You get tons and tons and tons of this garden waste that comes every day in the jungle. So we gather all of it. It all goes to EcoCentro. And when it gets to EcoCentro, we put it into a pyrolysis oven, which is basically a giant thing of earth with a hole in it, and you block out the oxygen, and you turn it into charcoal. Now, we use about 20 tons of charcoal per year at each of our resorts. It costs about $4 a ton of charcoal. So we making our own charcoal at $4 a kilo. When you consume 20 tons of it, it's helpful to the bottom line. It's not going to turn you into a billion-dollar company. When you do that across 4 resorts, it starts to help. Our food waste, just whatever comes out of the kitchens, whether it's the offcuts, whether it's whatever the leftovers are, we turn that into compost. That compost is used to feed our gardens. Those gardens grow the food that is served back to guests. This food actually saves us about $12,000 a month on each of our resorts in terms of avoided imports. And then metal waste. We get a lot of this. Some of this is our own metal waste. Obviously, there are tin cans and so on. Pitch, can you just hit the thing? Thanks. There are tin cans and so on. We melt all of these down. We have a small furnace, and we melt these down, and we turn these things. You can't really see them very well here, but these are all the hooks that you get for towels. These are the door handles. Everything that you see at our resorts, they're made here by this guy recycling these tin cans. And we sell these as well. We sell these small things for sort of $50 or $80 each. It's just 3 tin cans, which we found on the beach. And this is my favorite. Of all of the upcycling things, this is my favorite. So this is a crazy idea from Sonu, the owner, which is, let's build a glass factory. And the reason that we wanted to build a glass factory is because we get through about 100,000 bottles of wine a year, right? So it's a lot of wine. And what you do in the Maldives is you take the bottles and you crush them up and then you throw them in the sea, right? Because crushed up glass is sand, isn't it? Well, it's not really. So what we do is we take those bottles and we chuck them in a furnace. And that furnace generates usable glass. And we use some of that glass to make all of the glassware. So if you go to one of the restaurants, all the glasses and so on are made in our glass factory. But what we also do is we invite these visiting artists. This is an example of one of them. And they blow glass from all of the waste glass that we collect either from other resorts or from our own wine bottles and so on. And we typically have the glass artist would come and stay with us for 3 weeks, and they would make artworks during that 3 weeks. And of course, they get to enjoy the resort when they're there, so we're not paying them to do it. And then they leave these wonderful, we have a gallery, small gallery on the resort, and they leave these wonderful glass sculptures with us. And some of I'm not an artistic person, and some of what people can do with an old wine bottle is extraordinary. This, if anybody knows anything about glass, will know that this is the second most famous living glass artist on the planet. His name is Lino Tagliapietro. He does extraordinary things with glass. And this piece here, which contains, I'm told, as many as 4 wine bottles, sold for $120,000. So that's real waste to wealth. That's upcycling. That's looking at a problem you have, how the hell do we dispose of our glass? And using the innovation to drive the bottom line. I'd love to claim this as my idea. It definitely wasn't. But such a fantastic example of how sustainability drives innovation if you set the boundaries within which you're allowed to operate. And this is the key thing. You simply say what you can and can't do, and then you let people innovate around that. And that is the key. This is something, if you own a resort, you run a resort, or you live in Bangkok, which you know very, very well, mosquitoes, right? Anytime you operate a tropical resort, this is your biggest guest complaint, is always about mosquitoes. And we used to do the same as every other company does, which is you fog for mosquitoes, right? So you just go around literally twice a day fogging. But the problem is that 2 insecticides which you can use against mosquitoes. One is permethrin and the other one is deltamethrin. In tests by the WHO, those both of those insecticides were shown to have nearly 95% resistance, which means they are completely useless. You walk around spraying, and we spend probably about $20,000 a month per resort spraying insecticides to get rid of mosquitoes. It just doesn't work. So we stopped spraying altogether. And we said, if we're not killing the mosquitoes, we may as well just let them be. But we need to catch them. So again, we said, what's the sustainable solution? And the sustainable solution is these things, which are really, really cool. It's basically just a bucket. And in the bucket is a fan. And what you do is you put in a sachet of a pheromone, which smells a bit like sort of wet socks. Yeah, old wet socks. Yeah. So if you're walking around wearing old wet socks and you're being bitten, you'll know why. It's very attractive to mosquitoes. And so we put these all around our island. We geo-mapped all of them. So this is Soneva Fushi. And after 2 weeks, this is what we collected from each of these buckets. And we counted every single one. Right? We had some doctor students, PhD students to come and do that, and they counted 87,000 mosquitoes in the first 2 weeks, and then they divided them. They had to divide them into the two types of mosquito that we get, so we could see what mosquitoes we had, because different pheromones would attract different mosquitoes. And you can see what happened. We had these enormous spikes, tens of thousands of mosquitoes caught in a single week, and then population collapse after a while. No spraying. We haven't sprayed for years. This costs us about $8,000 a month in pheromone packages. It's far better for our guests. It's far better for my bottom line. So this is what it...
Try your staff's socks. You may be more economical or even sustainable.
That was the thing. What I do at home is I just leave a pair of socks over there. Yeah. So this is what it looked like. We geo-mapped everything. We worked with Google on this, and we checked. So every dish every day was checked for how many mosquitoes were in there. And you see over time what happened. And we found these small areas like this, where there were holes in the ground, which the mosquitoes were breeding in. And we managed to get in and find all of these, and we basically wiped out mosquitoes. They're hardy beasts, though, and they keep coming back. But we don't spray for them, and it's very unusual at our resorts to get bitten by mosquitoes. This is what happened. Apart from helping my bottom line, this is what happened. We had a flood of biodiversity because the spraying had killed everything else, just not the mosquitoes. So when you walked onto the resort, you couldn't hear anything. There were no insects. There was no sound. Now, there's the buzz of nature. It's a jungle, and you can hear the jungle. It's magical. And then it had a second benefit, which was that in the Maldives, you suffer from these outbreaks of hairy caterpillars. And they closed resorts. The Four Seasons had to close a few years ago because it was just overrun with these hairy caterpillars. And the reason is because the natural predator for the hairy caterpillar is a certain wasp. And the spraying had wiped out the wasps. Once we stopped spraying, the wasps came back. They started to predate on the hairy caterpillars. We still have hairy caterpillars, but they no longer bloom. So we no longer get, occasionally a guest will get stung, but it's quite unusual now. This, I used to get super excited about. I used to love this. This is a biolytics tank, yeah? Shit tanks. But these are really cool, right? These have got worms in them, right? These have got all sorts of really cool bacteria, they've got worms, they've got all sorts of things. And what happens is, the effluent goes in and it flows through all of these chambers, and then it comes out the other side, and it's super clean. Compared to chemicals and so on, super clean. I used to love this. This was my favorite. But then, we're not far from Bencher Kitty. I don't know if there's anybody who hasn't gone here, and I can't believe there is anybody that hasn't, but if you haven't, go. Right, go. Because what is unique, what is unique about this, and what not a lot of people realize, and we had a walk around with the architect and designer of Bencha Kitty, and she explained all of the challenges that they went through in setting this up, most particularly the amount of money they had to spend, which was about zero. But running down, I'm just trying to get my bearings here, running, where's my hand? Running down here is a sewage treatment plant. And that's all this is, right? It's a klong which feeds water directly into a vetiver pond, which runs down the side of the park, and then it is pumped into these ponds. And that's all it is. And that's really, really cool. So, in the Maldives, we have that same system which we built. We have one here in Thailand, Soneva, which actually the architect of Bencha Kitty came to Soneva to have a look at our vetiver ponds there. But we have this in Soneva Jani, and this is a man-made version of what you've just seen. And we have vetiver which cleans all of our wastewater. So we still have the biolytics tanks, and they clean things, but they're not as exciting to me as this. This is absolutely extraordinary. This is the wastewater we have, and it's one of our biggest guest attractions at our resort. It's one of the places people want to hang out the most. And it looks eerily like a worm. Those are aerators. Those are aerators. Yeah. Right. Oh, okay. When you come to the Maldives, this is what you want to see, isn't it? Amazing coral. This is why you come. This is off the internet. It's not from our resort, right? Because coral doesn't look like that anymore. What coral looks like now, and certainly what coral looks like this month, is like this. The biggest bleaching event in possibly the history of the world is happening right now. And it's happening right now. And every day I get the pictures that come from the reefs, from our marine biologists and our divers, showing what's happening. So what we have at Soneva Fushi is this extraordinary coral propagation program. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get coral to be more resilient to climate change. So it's what's called accelerated evolution. And it's basically what you do is you find corals which have survived a heating event or a disease event, and you harvest small pieces of them. And in this case here, this is a spawning tank that's here. So actually we get a spawning event, we dive. The spawning events happen only once a year for each coral species. Very, very rare, which is why corals are so susceptible to climate change, because they can't evolve fast enough. They're not like mosquitoes, which evolve every week. What we do is we collect that spawn, we put it into these tanks, we grow the corals out, then we put them into these much larger tanks that we have on the island, onto these small plugs, and we grow out new corals on land. And we then take that coral and we put it onto a sort of fake rock. We plug it full, and then we dump it into the sea. And before we dump it into the sea, we get them out, and then we put them into this nursery, we call it. And in the nursery, we're able to cover the thing to protect them from predation. And once the corals have grown sufficiently, we then take them and we plant them onto the reef. And what I showed you earlier was a picture of the internet. What I can show you now is a picture of our reef. This reef, I can tell you, looked a lot like this not long before we started working on it. So all of this is stuff that is, these are fairly young. Some of these have been transplanted from other places, but this is a piece of our reef taken without fancy filters on cameras and so on. So far, it's been pretty successful. We've got this bleaching event that's happening now. We're going to see how the coral lasts. Chances are a lot of it's going to get wiped out, but we'll have corals which will survive, and we'll take those and we will breed them, and so it will happen. So we're hopeful that this can help in terms of coral survival, not just in the Maldives, not just at our resorts, but globally. And from a bottom line point of view, why is this helpful? Well, maybe not from a bottom line point of view, but from the point of view of my balance sheet and the risk associated with climate change when you are living in the Maldives, is that without coral reefs, without mangroves, our islands are going to get wiped out. Not by rising sea levels. That happens, right? What happens is sea levels rise, coral breaks, it ends up on the beach. This has been happening for millions of years in the Maldives. What happens when you get climate change, serious climate change, is that the wave levels rise, right? When storms come in, and that's the problem, right? Because you get these storm surges, and that's the issue which we're hoping to protect against. Couple of other things, and then I'll shut up. CO2, I mentioned earlier that we were a carbon neutral company. Carbon neutrality is, for some people it's controversial. Carbon offsetting certainly is controversial for some people. Not for me. I think that this idea of eliminating carbon emissions from anywhere in the world is worthwhile doing. It can be hugely expensive. If you're buying carbon credits, it's crazy, crazy expensive. Now, my background is actually, I'm not a hospitality person. I'm actually not even a finance person. I am an ex-hedge fund manager, and the focus that I had was on impact investing. And so when I was working in London, what we would do is set up these projects which would generate carbon credits, which we could then sell, and it was that drove the returns of the fund. And I used that policy and that process to set up the Myanmar Stoves campaign. This is before I joined Soneva. We did a couple of programs in Darfur, for example, but in Myanmar is our largest one. We've distributed about 50 odd, I think it's more than 52,000 now, it's about 60,000 stoves. And they generate a huge, offset a huge amount of carbon emissions. Every stove costs about $30. We sell it for $2, so we lose about $28 on each stove that we sell. The reason we sell it for $2 is if you just give someone a stove, they don't treat it in the same way. They don't use it. You charge them $2, they'll use it. We get 5 tons of carbon per stove per year. The stove lasts about 4 years. So you get 20 tons of carbon, or 20 tons of credits. Those typically sell for about $30 a ton. So you can see the economics of doing that is not affecting. So we get those carbon emissions. The money goes back into the project to start to accelerate the project, and that drives more carbon credits into the system. Those carbon credits the surplus credits that we don't invest back into the stoves campaign, we then invest into things like mangroves. Mangroves, again, are hugely important for protecting the environment, for protecting coastal environments. We have extensive plantings, again, in Myanmar, where we've used the income to come out of the stoves campaign and the sale of those carbon credits to invest in those. These mangroves themselves generate a huge number of carbon credits for us. So we have this surplus on surplus of these bloody carbon credits. If you want any, I can sell you some. And then we plant trees. We plant trees here in Thailand. We plant trees. We've just finished planting 4 million trees in Mozambique. We are planting trees in the Philippines. We plant trees in many, many places. And all of these investments, and I call them investments because they're not charitable contributions. They're ways in which we're offsetting our carbon emissions and ensuring that we are carbon neutral at the same time as contributing to society and making sure that we are having a positive impact on the world. This kind of sums up how we do it. So we actually have a charity called the Soneva Foundation to make sure that we segregate any profits that come out of this from the company. And what we do, and this is just give you a real world example of how we do this and how impact investing works in our charity, is that we've invested about just over $3 million in buying these cook stoves and putting them out in Myanmar. And then we get, so the cost per ton generated is about $4.7 at the moment. We have 670,000 carbon credits. Some of them we use to offset our emissions, right? To make ourselves carbon neutral. Anything that we don't offset, we sell. When we sell, we use the money to invest into a second fund. So we basically call this a sort of seed, our incubator fund, right? It's what drives the rest of the business. So this allows us to be carbon neutral. It ensures that the original program, the source of all these extra carbon credits, continues to run. And then we invest that into our accelerator models. Now, accelerator models are investing in things like, for example, in Myanmar, these mangroves, which themselves generate huge volumes of carbon credits, $20 million of carbon credits over 25 years. That money itself is going into a second accelerator fund, right? One that we're working on in Cambodia at the moment. So this will continue. You've got to be patient. Set this up 10 years ago. But in 20 years' time, this will still be going. Soneva does not need to invest money in driving this. And then whatever we're not investing, we're pumping into the ground. These are what we call our accumulators. We're building forests. We're planting forests everywhere. Every forest that or every tree that you plant absorbs somewhere between half a ton and a ton, depending on what you plant. But we don't get carbon credits from these. We don't need them. We just kind of, if you like, just bank carbon. We're just talking about taking carbon out of the atmosphere. All of this is just overflow from what we have. And then this is also what we use to fund that coral program that we have earlier, with all the scientists and all the research that's there. So sustainability in action. There are not many non-sustainable companies in the world who have profit centers that work quite as well as this. So this is where I'm going to finish. Question is, if your company is not focused on sustainability, how do you do it? How do you start? How do you go about it? Super simple. Simple. If it wasn't, I wouldn't be able to do it. So there's just 5 steps to go through. One is decide, and there are consultants in the room who can tell you for sure how you can do this better than we can. But basically, just choose your framework, right? Don't try and, if you're going to measure your emissions, if you're going to measure something against, so for example, we do the SDGs. So one of the things we look at is the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Or you may just choose scope 1, 2, 3, whatever. Choose a framework and work within one framework, because there are many competing frameworks. And if you try and satisfy all of them, you just find yourself in a muddle. So pick a framework. Second thing is choose a scope. When I say a scope, there's 3 scopes really. Scope 1 is what happens in your backyard. Scope 2 is energy that you consume from a third party. And then the third one is scope 3. Scope 3 is everything that happens outside of your garden gate, but which still affects you. So for example, in our case, we have guests that fly from London to the Maldives. Well, we're benefiting from all of those. That's scope 3. We take responsibility. You don't need to. But decide your scope, 1, 2, or 3, because if you're scope 3, it starts to get pretty. So maybe you just start with scope 1, but pick your scope. So you've got your framework and your scope. Collect your baseline data. Just figure out where you are. If you're in Thailand, you've probably got your one report. So you'll have a pretty good idea about that. If you don't, again, there are people in the room who can definitely help you with collecting your baseline data. Set yourself some goals. Our goal was to be carbon zero, or to be carbon neutral to start with, and then carbon zero. And now we have bigger goals than that, to be decarbonizing. But figure out what it is that you want to achieve and just focus on that. And then, of course, just track your performance. And these two things here are the part that drive the innovation, right? Just saying, we've got to achieve this, figure it out, as we did with those glass bottles, as we did with the mosquitoes, as we've done so many things. We have so many problems in our company and in our resorts which we have to fix, and we have to fix them in a sustainable way. And it requires people to think, to come up with magical ideas that don't cost a lot of money. Now, I'm going to leave you with this. Don't get left behind. This is something that, as an analogy, is so true. If you're not following the crowd, right, there's a chance that you can get left behind. Can he do it? Can he do it? Come on. Oh, yeah. But if you miss it, if you miss this chance before IFRS comes in, this is what you are going to be looking like, trying to get onto that mountain, right? So take the chance now whilst you have it. One of them made it, yeah. Because otherwise this is what it's like, trying to get up the sustainability curve when you're chasing and when you're a follower. So rather try and be a leader in sustainability. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. And it's amazing to see how he started from a little pain point in the operation and made it grow into a very impactful to the environment, the society, the social, and the people in the wider communities. It's amazing. And right now it's time for a Q&A. So if any of you have the questions, please raise your hand. The team will chair. Please, Kat.
Please don't make them difficult. We have consultants in the room who are really good and smart at stuff. So if there are difficult questions, I'm going to call on them.
Tip, could you please give us the formula for your mosquito thing? And, for the stove, did they use wood to do that? In Thailand, it will be difficult. Thank you.
So in terms of the ingredients, it's just wet socks, moldy wet socks. It's a pheromone. So there's a pheromone that gets manufactured, and we purchase that pheromone in a sachet. And it's something that some scientists came up with. So I don't know what the formula is, but if I find it, I'll share it. And then, yeah, the cook stoves are wood. The wood cook stoves, because what happens, and I grew up in Africa, so everything we did was with wood, right? Any fire was with wood. If you wanted to drink clean water, you had to boil it first. I make myself sound like a country boy, don't I? But this is why the carbon emissions are so valuable from these sorts of projects, is because it's not you're not avoiding gas. What you're avoiding is both the carbon emissions, but also the deforestation of people cutting down trees for firewood. And often that firewood is used just to boil water as well, purify water, not just heat food. And that's why you get so many carbon credits from a single stove in a single year. But the benefits of it to the environment are enormous in terms of deforestation. And it means that from our forestry program as well, it actually started, when we started this program, we were trying to see how we could stop deforestation, right? Not how we could so we came at the problem from a different way. And we said, well, how do we stop people chopping down trees? Well, give them a means which is much more efficient in terms of burning. And it turned out the other way around, where we started to use the stoves then to drive the reforestation.
Yeah, can I elaborate a bit? It's probably something local. The stove that he gave out is because when people around here, use Anglo, it's like they cut a lot of woods, right? And it's a lot of carbon, the smoke coming out. The stove that was designed is a bit kind of having smaller holes to draw the air into it, and will create much less smoke and use less charcoal, basically, right? Because of the way that it was designed. That's why it saves a lot of carbon to burn in the air, and also use much less charcoal, which is wood that they use. So
that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anna and I used to work together. There you are.
Yeah, I used to be in Soneva Success, yeah. มีคำถามอะไรไหมคะ Any questions? ค่ะเชิญค่ะ Please.
Thank you so much for inspiring presentation. One thing, normally when you choose where you invest for social, you choose where you have your operations business. Why you choose Myanmar instead of Thailand or Maldives?
That's a very good question. We do a lot of stuff in the Maldives, an awful lot of stuff in the Maldives. You can't really find opportunities for carbon offsetting in the Maldives. We planted forests here in Thailand, actually. Anne, you were around at Soneva when we, before my time, planted forests up in Chiang Mai. You can't plant forests in the Maldives. So what we had to look at was opportunities. And when it comes to carbon offsetting, it doesn't matter where in the world you do it. And so Myanmar, the opportunity was there. We actually set this project up. I set this project up before I joined Soneva. So it wasn't really Soneva's decision as to where the project was. But you're right, the best projects are local, and the majority of what we do is local. These examples I've given, but most of what we do in the Maldives, or most of our environmental programs are in the Maldives.
Thank you for the presentation, Converse. Adding to this question, to be in the boardroom, with the board members, and with all the different objectives, members would have different ideas, some different investment. So from the history of Soneva, is there something that the company have learned with regards to what are the criteria when choosing an investment? Because there's so many options, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. So is that a quick clear criteria, 1, 2, 3, ไปทางนี้ก็ดี Thank you.
Can I just clarify, are you talking about just any investment within the company? Or are you talking about this? Yeah. So the starting point, so again, I've got these two hats. So when we want to achieve something, whatever that thing is, for example, dispose of glass, we have to say it has to be sustainable, and we have these forms that you have to fill in, demonstrating that a particular purchase that you're making, for example, is sustainable. And then there has to be another one on my side, the other side, which is show me that it's the most cost effective, or that it makes the most profit. So there's the bottom line. We never ever, if it's not if it's not profitable, I don't want to hear about it. Don't come to me with a sustainable investment that does not make money. I'm absolutely not interested. You send that back to someone, and they will sit and they will figure out how to make it profitable. And that's where the innovation comes. And that's why sustainability is the most amazing driver of innovation that you can find anywhere. Because people want to do the right thing. Same thing with a profitable investment. You say to someone, you can do that, but it has to be sustainable. Making something sustainable is actually quite easy. You simply choose the best option, but it then has to be the most cost effective, and it has to be, or in many cases, profitable. And that's what drives the innovation. That's what gets people to sit down in groups and think, how the hell do I do this? How the hell can we make disposal of glass make money? How the hell can we make our mosquito program more cost effective? How can we make money out of pots and pans or old cans or flip-flops that wash up on the beach?
some of the ideas come from people in the front line, the cook, the chef, and how does that idea travel? So then the right person with the right ability to look into the number behind it and then present it to the higher level discussions.
So normally what would happen is the idea ownership will stay with an individual, but often the ideas, as you said, they come from the person who's cooking the food, who notices something, but they don't have the financial capability. So they would bring that forward to their supervisor, whoever that is. It would make its way, the seniority chain for us is very low. We have one layer of people. Yeah, because, and so somebody will just call me and say, Bruce, this is an idea. And then I've got, a ton of analysts that I will just set to work on finding a different way. And then what we do is if there's an idea that's, I wouldn't say worthy of it, because most ideas are worthy of it, but it would go to the senior management and we would debate a lot of these things and come up with a way forward, a way to do these things. And we have, so I have a ton of young analysts that work for me here in Bangkok, and to try and drive that innovation through people who, they've come straight out of university. They don't necessarily know much about sustainability or business or anything else. They have to come up with 3 sustainability initiatives, which they present at our 6 monthly SSMs to the whole group on sustainability initiative. This is a sustainability initiative I've come up with for F&B. This is a sustainability initiative I've come up with for housekeeping or whatever it is. And they each have to come up with 3 of them. And if you've got 7 analysts coming up with 3 ideas every 6 months, the flow of ideas starts to generate, because other people go, hang on a second, that's a good idea. But what happens if we do this with it? Or what happens if we do that with it? So we have, we're a very fertile company when it comes to ideas. We focus on what's called structured innovation sessions. So every senior manager has to hold a structured innovation session at least once a month. And we use like a 6 thinking hats approach, if you're aware of the approach. And you come up with a problem, solve a problem, come up with a problem, solve a problem. And most of those problems, because of our culture, are sustainability focused. So that's a very roundabout way of not answering your question.
Can I ask more questions? Since Soneva is clearly a very purpose-driven company, and it embeds into the culture, so everyone can show up, that raise their idea and develop it further. How does it impact the way you manage people, retention, and how does it impact the motivation of the people in the company?
That's another really good point. Our host retention is very high, or our staff turnover is very low. I think it's about 9% at Soneva Fushi. For example, it's higher at Soneva Jani because it's a new resort, but it's about 13%. So that is pretty low in a Maldives context. Normally you'd be looking at 25%. That culture and that purpose is something that's very strong. I guess, look, at most companies, if you worked at Shell and you bump into people who worked at Shell in 10 years' time, you all get along, and isn't Shell a great company? It's got a great culture, or BP, or any of the others. Soneva is quite unique in that, though, that the culture is not just about the way in which people deal with each other and about the office gossip. It's actually about the core values. And we have incredibly strong core values. No lists, things that we can and can't do, which people absolutely buy into. So all of our hosts live on the resort, so we accommodate all of them. I mentioned we don't have plastic on our resort, so all of the shampoos, all of the shaving creams, the toothpastes, all of these have to be provided for them in renewable packaging and so on. So we live these sorts of values. And so it just permeates your life, and it just becomes, as you know very well, it just becomes part of who you are.
Yes, and it's not only on the work, environment or culture, it embeds into personal lifestyle. I recall that the way they embed it very simple. One question I got when I do evaluation, regular evaluation, they asked one question that, what do you do more this year that reflect our core values in personal life and regular life? That question stunned me. It's like, oh wow, this is how you kind of put a deep root into the culture, and in a very simple and easy way. That's something amazing.
I think, but it's hard work. Driving any culture through any organization is incredibly difficult because you've got to, you can't be, walking around with plastic bottles of water. So it's something that to live those values and to, particularly if you're a leader in one of those organizations, it's very challenging. Yeah.
Two questions.
Do you have any advice for the smaller companies to start the sustainable projects?
Great question, Naka. Very good questions.
Yeah, well, Soneva is a small company. Yeah, we are a very small company. So I suppose, I mean, it doesn't matter how big or small you are as a business. I think it's just if you have the right value system in place right from the start, you will attract the right people as you grow. And those people will continue to perpetuate the value system that you put in place. So make sure that your compass is pointing in the right direction at the beginning. And then as you grow, everybody will follow that compass. I suppose that's the only, I won't say advice, but perhaps the approach that I would take. Yeah.
Thank you ค่ะ เชิญค่ะ ด้านหลังเลยค่ะ
Thank you very much for sharing very interesting question. Just wonder, because the sustainability cover many areas as you has mentioned, and however when you present, you're very focused on climate change. Any other issue that you are looking at? And that's the first question. Secondly, that from your experience, what are your critical success factor? Because you have two hats, something very very rare in many companies, but you give us a very good example. And in terms of, so what are the critical success factor in implementing sustainability in the company? In your opinion, also, what are the challenge issues that you have faced? Because this is service-based company, and we also have some production company as well. Maybe from your experience, you can share with us. Thank you.
Okay. Many questions there. What was the first question again? Oh, ESG. Oh, yes. Sorry. ESG. Yeah, I focus a lot on the E. Because I think that's the part that people find the most tangible. Not just the climate change, or not just the carbon emission side of things, but biodiversity as well. Most of our focus is probably on social and on outreach programs. We work, the majority of our resorts are in, even when we own Six Senses, before we sold Six Senses, all of those Six Senses properties were in remote places. And in the Maldives, there are many, many social challenges around education, around gender, around all sorts of things, which we have to deal with. Things like single-use plastic in the Maldives is a huge problem, as it is in Thailand. So a lot of our focus is on being directly engaged in the community. So our biggest program, which I didn't mention here, is called Soneva Namuna. And that is a program which sets up waste management facilities, water production facilities, and so on remote islands, and provides all of those basically social services to the local communities, which they don't get from the government necessarily. And we do that, again, in using impact investing methodologies wherever we can. So social for us is a huge focus. And then, of course, governance, but I think everybody in the room is focused on governance. That's your job, you know. So that's something that's really important for us. But I think if I talked about some of the social issues in the Maldives, it probably doesn't translate very well, whereas the environment is something that translates to everyone everywhere in the world. In terms of the critical success factor, I think like in anything in business, it's knowing what you want to achieve and being belligerent about whether or not you're going to achieve it. As I said earlier, don't bring a sustainable investment that doesn't make money. You can change sustainable behaviors. For example, you know, eliminating single-use plastic. That's something that is a lot of it's just a change of behavior, and there may be certain capex associated with getting the last 20% over the line, and we may consider that in a non-profitable. We may not have a profit metric associated with that, but you've got to be really belligerent about things, because it's the belligerence that drives the innovation. So I have read lots of red lines, particularly around sustainability, that you won't cross. And then you find that sustainability is just so easy. It's just so easy.
เชิญค่ะสองท่านนะคะข้างหน้าท่านหนึ่งด้วยแล้วก็เชิญท่านข้างหลังก่อนนะคะ
Sorry to ask a second question. You talk about risk, especially Maldives. How far is geopolitics affecting your business? For example, the yesterday election, the pro-China government won the election. Do you look at this as having any impact on your business? And what will it be? Because we don't talk a lot about geopolitics risk. Just want to know your view. Thank you.
You can choose. It's way beyond sustainability, but you know, up to you.
It was a bit of a surprise, the election victory, the extent of the victory. It was an absolute landslide, which was a little bit of a surprise. What it shows is obviously either the extent of the ill will that exists towards the MDP. I mean, I think that's called 11% or something. That's the Democratic Party, and the sort of environmental party, if you like. So look, I was surprised, but you know, we work and we have business in that country, and in exactly the same as having a business in Thailand. If you're going to live here, you live by Thai rules, right? You respect the culture, and we will do that. We don't vote, but we have a business there. We also contribute to that country, so we have a voice, and we express that voice not by telling the local community who they should support or who they shouldn't, but by making sure that the government continues to fund sustainability initiatives and continues to ensure that all the good work that's happened over the last 20 years in the Maldives in particular continues through support in the appropriate way.
Thank you, Bruce. You mentioned about deciding to cover scope 1, 2, or 3, right? To me, scope 1 is kind of controllable. It's under your own control, and you can find innovative way to deal with it. But when you decided to cover scope 3, which is kind of out of control, for example, the carbon emitted by passengers coming from London, what went on inside your head? Because
to me, it's kind of unprofitable you have to exchange your own carbon credit, or sometimes you have to offset it, and that costs money.
You know, the slide that I would refer to is Milton Friedman, where he said, what's the responsibility that you have, right? And if you live in an apartment building and every time your trash can is full, you just throw it over the side, it's not really a way to live. So you have to take responsibility for everything. And we make money out of people coming to our resorts. The carbon emissions that come from us making that money affect every single person in the room here. Why should it be your responsibility to deal with my rubbish, right? We have to take responsibility for that. And that's the key, I think, between that decision as to scope 1, 2, or 3. So then you say, well, hang about, we don't really have control. That's true to a degree, but you have a choice. So when I go to my purchasing guy and he says, hey, you know, I've got these batteries, or I've got, I buy some beef, let's say, and I've got this Argentinian beef or Brazilian beef, absolutely amazing, right? Really cool. And it costs half of what this New Zealand grass-fed, free-range, whatever beef is. But the land use change and all the rest of it is very, very high. Well, we say, well, we have a choice, and the choice is we don't sell beef. So if you really, really, really want beef, there will be some at the back of the freezer in our resorts. You can't charge what we charge and not offer that. But it's very carefully sourced. We know the farm that comes from and the process that it goes through. But we try to, what's called choice editing. You will not find beef on our menu, so nobody orders it. We find there's plenty of other alternatives for you. If you have a hamburger, it's not beef. It just lists as hamburger, and it'll be chicken or something like that. No one ever complains.
So the reason not to sell beef because of the carbon issue, sustainability reason. Oh, interesting. And so lamb is better.
It's not, but we don't actually sell. We don't sell a lot of lamb. But actually, well, lamb. It's interesting because free-range lamb is better than free-range beef. The issue is, so one of the other things we have is that, so if you are going to eat beef, you're much better off from a carbon point of view eating feedlot beef from the US, right? This stuff, this where you have 1,000 cattle shoved into a room this size, and you're much better off from an environmental point of view doing that. But obviously from an animal welfare point of view, that's not acceptable. If you have free-range beef from Australia or from New Zealand, you have to grow the cow for normally 6 months longer. And in those 6 months, yeah, lots of burps and things. Free-range stuff is actually worse for the environment, or certainly I won't say the environment, for carbon emissions, which is a little bit counterintuitive. So that's a bit, sometimes you have these decisions where you have to get your head around them, and our decision is we don't sell beef.
Interesting, very interesting. Any questions, Ka? Okay. Okay. So if there's no questions from the floor, I think let me summarize a bit on how to what have you share with us today. I think a lot of things that you start came from the pain point, right? The pain point in the business. Coming from like vegetables that you start growing because there's some pain point that you have. The glass from wine bottle, you don't know where to handle it. So it became a touch of creativity would find you solutions. And then you start taking care and try to make a choice by having sustainability wrap around it. You always care of this factor when you call decision, right? And everything, since you start from a very purpose-driven company, it deep into the culture, so it's easier for Soneva to develop innovation and create a sustainability mindset. Once you start doing that, it grows from scope 1 to scope 2, and then you start expanding to scope 3. And I'm very impressed in the big master plan that you start growing, and basically you are building carbon credit in the whole pipeline that you have. Once you start doing that, it become effective. Probably you can be the resort of the choice, right, to the consumer. And also whatever you did around the island, to the coral things, or any mangrove growing, those are to protect your basically the nature, and end up the very important element for resorts. It becomes the license to operate. Without that, then probably your business may not be sustainable, right? That's very impressive story that share with us, and more importantly, it always have a touch of CFO, okay, stakeholder interest, and make it more kind of doable for existing boardroom. So thank you very much, and I would like to invite Kun Kulawet to say thank you to Bruce.
Well, what do you think after hearing? You want to go?
Yeah, exactly.
Have anyone been there? I need to discount. Anyway, book through me, and how about site visit? And anyway, I think one thing this was really, really inspiring. But I knew Sonu and Eva for a long time too, and I had a great pleasure to be there in all the resorts, and not that I am rich, because one trip to that resort, Soneva, means I have to trade off with 2 European trips. Seriously. But anyway, what we are trying to say here is that I wish we could talk more a little bit about Eva and Sonu, because those are the founder, and Eva and Sonu is Soneva, and even before that is Eva Son, right? Sixth Sense and everything. And Eva, they're couple, and I remember that Eva was really, really passionate about sustainability, even before the word sustainability is being known, and that was 20 years ago. And she was complaining that, oh my God, the mobile phone that we're using, would the frequency impact our brain? Or so they come from different world, and if we want to start, it starts with that kind of belief. And if you start with that kind of belief, it will be simple. And you know what? Talking about E, I want to talk about S. So a few times that I've been to Soneva Fushi, I was like so surprised that how come all staff are so pleasant and they are so great at brand ambassador. So one day I asked out of the blue, please, can I get a tour to the staff area? Because I want to know how you treat your staff. Sorry, I didn't tell you this. And you know what? I want to be a staff there, because it's so nice.
You can be.
Sorry?
You can be. Speak to me after.
The area was so nice with snookers area. I thought it was still the resort and pizza oven. And that night was the best night of my trip, because I got to crash into staff party. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that Sonu know almost all the staff by name.
All of them.
And that, there is no layer. So he is the chief culture officer. And by that, he can make it, because it's his dream, and he communicates his dream vividly and with passion together with Eva. And You know, this is the resort that once you go, you cannot stop going back because you discover about yourself. You discover about what luxury really means. And it means things that money cannot buy. And it's precious. Really. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bruce, for coming and share all this.
Thank you very much. And may I use this time
I want to go back.
give the souvenir for both of our speaker.
ขอบคุณมากครับอ่า Thank you ขอบคุ
คุณ ณ
มา
แอก นมาเลยค่ะ
Thank you yeah very nice one
Can you
Okay.
and ค่ะ
เสร็จแล้ว
During this time, may I
โอ้โอ้อ๋อ
may I invite you to do the evaluation form for evaluate this event? And I would like to inform you that on this event, we took your photos. If you are not comfortable to publish your photos on our channel, please inform us. And we also want to promote your upcoming event that will occur in this month. The first one is Aspiring Directors, Power of Passion, Where Dream and Reality Meet, which will be conducted on 2nd May, which will be have Mr. William from Minor to giving the speech of this. And this one we will conduct in English as well. And the second one is Director Forum on the topic of holistic health train for director. Maximizing performance through mind body wellness on 16 May. And the third one is AGM and dinner, which we'll conduct on 27, and we also have the speed after the AGM as well. And the last one of this month is the special event on the topic of 2074 Masterclass Unlocking Financial Potential with Climate Risk Intelligence on 30 May. And we also have many upcoming events after this, so you can check on our social media or our website as well. And if you bring the car, you can stamp your car in a car card in front of the escalator. And thank you for coming today and have a nice evening. สวัสดีค่ะ